G'day lads, in this video you'll learn how to update the Excel Lads NBA model to include overtime and live win probability features. If you want to read an explanation of this process and then download the model, click the first link in the description below to go to the Excel Lads Patreon. Once you've done that lads, let's get into the video. So lads, in this matchup we've got the Celtics playing at the Lakers. The Celtics have the advantage, 65% win probability with an expected scoreline of 112 to 105. Now before we make any updates to the model, go into the simulations worksheet and delete columns C through to A. This is so that when we make changes, the 1000 simulations don't update and we won't be slowed down at all. So you can delete L2 all the way through to 06. We'll just update that at the end. Now the first change we're going to make is to simulate the amount of expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts. So right now in our formulas we're referring to F12 and we keep that constant, but rather we want to simulate that as well because a player won't always get, say, 14 field goals and free throws in a match. So right over the top of F12 with the binomial inverse function, 10,000 trials, the probability S is F12 divided by 10,000, and the alpha is the RAND function, open bracket, close bracket, and then close that binomial inverse function. Now copy and paste that for every single F12 in the function, or the formula here, F12, F12, except for the F12 after the round function there. So when I press enter, the point simulation updates, drag that down to row 25 and then delete the value in row 17. Now our point simulation have been updated to include the simulation of the shots a player makes in a match, and we can paste that into N32 for the away side. Now our next step, lads, is to come up with a simulation of the overtime if need be. So if the home points matches the away points scored in normal time, well then NBA matches go to a period of overtime, which is 5 minutes. So in cell O11, I'm going to write the formula equals if, open bracket, our test is number, open bracket, O12. If there's a number in O12, then we want to return in speech marks OV dot and then a hash sign, and then we're going to write and column, open bracket, close bracket, minus 14, because O is column 15. In this column we want overtime 1, and then if the is number O12 is false, return nothing. Drag that across to Q11, and then now if I put a number in cell O12, for example 12, then overtime 1 appears. If I drag that across to Q12, then overtime 1, 2, and 3 appear. And so later on in the model, we're going to write formulas that will simulate players' points scored, and they'll come up there, meaning the headers will too. And we can chart for the away team, 2, 3, 4, overtime, #1, #2, and #3 should appear in columns O through to Q. Now we can actually simulate Russell's overtime points scored in the first period if the home team points matches the away team points. And to do that, we're going to copy the formula in N12, and we're going to wrap that in an if function when we're writing out the formula in O12. So equals if the sum of N12 to N25, which is the home points scored in normal time, is equal to the sum of, scroll down, N32 to N45, the away side points. Then we can simulate a number of points scored in overtime for D'Angelo Russell. If not, then double speech mark there indicating no points because the game hasn't gone to overtime. But remember, overtime is only 5 minutes, not 48. So we need to multiply the expected number of field goal attempts and free throw attempts by 5 over 48. So wrap F12 divided by 10,000 in brackets and then multiply by 5 divided by 48. So we're going to do that for every instance of F12 in this formula. Multiplied by 5 over 48, wrap the F12 and 10,000 in brackets, and then multiply by 5 over 48. And this time we are going to make changes to the round function here. In between the two brackets before F12, put 5 divided by 48 times. And now we have Russell's simulated points for a period of overtime if need be. Drag that down to row 25, and then we can delete the value in row 17. So now we have the first period of overtime recorded for the Lakers. What happens if it's still tied up after overtime 1? Well, we need to go to column P and simulate the second period of overtime. So copy and paste the formula in cell O12, and it's nearly going to be the exact same thing. Paste that in here. Instead of the sum being N12 to N25, it's going to be N12 to O25, because now we're taking into account overtime 1. We've got to make sure that the sum of the home team's normal time points plus that overtime 1 points is equal to the away side's normal time plus overtime 1 points, which is N32 to O45. Press enter on that, and then drag the formula in P12 down to P25. You can delete the value in row 17 again. And we've got to do the exact same process for cell Q12. So copy and paste the formula in P12, go across to Q12, and then we're just tweaking the logical test in the if function at the start. It's going to be N12 to P25 equal to the sum of N32 to P45. Drag that across like this. Absolute reference it so that when you drag it down, the dollar signs in front of the column and row keep the ranges constant. And once you drag that down to row 25, or the overtime values have been filled out for the home side, select O12 to Q25, and then copy and paste that into cell O32. So we've got the same thing for the away side. And now I just want to show you what this formula does. So I'm going to press backspace a few times and simulate the game so that we eventually come to a match that is tied after normal time and has to go to overtime, and here it does. So the Lakers and the Celtics are tied up after normal time, but in overtime 1, the Lakers score 6 points compared to the Celtics 11. So the game ends, it doesn't go to overtime 2, and the Celtics win. So that's our overtime feature done now. We won't redo the simulation so we can find the win probabilities for each team just yet, because we're going to make a new sheet for the live win probability. So select the result tab, go into move or copy, select result, select create a copy, and then press OK. So we've got a copy of the result worksheet, and I'm going to name it live win probability. We're going to make some changes to the worksheet before we do some calculations. The first of those is making the home and away team dependent on those selected in the result worksheet, because the players in column B depend on the play working worksheet, which of course depends on them being selected in the result worksheet. So for the home team, the formula is going to be equals E2 from the result worksheet, and then same thing for Boston. It's going to be equals E5 in result. Great. Now our next change is going to be inserting a row at the top of the worksheet. So select row 1, right click, insert a row. Then we're going to go over to N1 to O1 and merge and center these cells. Here we're going to put the text expected points. And so in those two gray cells, by the end of this worksheet, we'll still have the expected points for the match, and in the white cells, the probability of the Lakers or Celtics winning. But what we're going to do now is then select cells N1 to O7, copy the formatting, and then paste the formatting into Q1. And for this title, I'll write time left. Here we can put in the quarter and the time left in the quarter for our live win probability. And then I'm going to do the same thing, copy and paste the formatting of Q1 to R7 into cell T1, and here I'm going to put the current score. And so when this worksheet's done, we're going to put the current score of the match, the time left in the match, and then the model will produce the expected points for each team in the game, as well as the win probability for the Lakers and the Celtics. Let's say in this game, the Lakers are beating the Celtics 83-72. For this cell up here under time left, I'm going to go into the data tab, into data validation, It's going to make a pop-up window. I'm going to allow a list, and it's either going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4, representing what quarter it is. So I'll press OK on that, and I'll select quarter 3, 83 to 72. Usually happens in the third quarter. And then in the cell below, I'm going to change the formatting from number to text, or whatever it is in your model, to text. That way I can put the time 1:15, and you're able to change this to whatever you want. So for example, if it's the start of the quarter, we can put 12:00, representing the typical clock in any match. So I'll change this back to 1:15 left in the third quarter. And our next step is scaling back the expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts for each player in the match so that it suits the time left in the game. So I'll go to cell F13, and I'll add on to this formula here by multiplying it, open bracket, 12 times by, open bracket. It's going to be 4 minus Q3. Make sure you absolute reference Q3 by putting $signs in front of the column and row. Close bracket plus open bracket. We're using the value function. Our text is going to be a left function, open bracket. We're looking in cell Q6, absolute reference this as well. And we're finding in speech marks the colon here, close the speech marks, within Q6, absolute reference, close the bracket here, and then we're subtracting 1 from that, close the bracket twice, and now we're adding a value function, open bracket. Our text is going to be found through the right function. Our text is Q6, and the number of characters is the length function, len, open bracket, Q6 absolute referenced, close bracket, minus the find function, open bracket, colon in speech marks, comma, Q6 absolute referenced, close the bracket 3 times, we're dividing that by 60, close that bracket twice, and then we're dividing all this by 48. So press enter, and D'Angelo Russell's expected field goal attempts plus free throw attempts has been scaled back from its original 14 to 3.9, and we can drag that down to row 26. Now I'm going to copy this part of the formula here, which we just wrote out, and add it onto the end of cell F33 to scale back Drew Holiday's expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts, or expected shots in the match. Drag that down to row 46, and then now if I change the amount of time left, the expected shots in the match would change as well. So if I change it to, say, the second quarter, there's more time left in the match, therefore the expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts is more. Now lads, we're going to make a couple of changes to the overtime formulas in columns O, P, and Q. Our first one is going to be updating the logical test in the if function. So because there's an existence of a current score in our live win probability worksheet here, instead of the test running the simulations, if N13 to N26 is equal to N33 to N46, we've got to add the home team current score to the normal time simulations and make that equal to the sum of the rest of the game for the away team plus their current score. So it's the home team current score plus the rest of game simulations equal to the rest of game simulations for the away team plus the away team current score. Now our next step is updating F13. Because that's changed to a time left adjusted amount, we've got to put that back to our full game amount, and that can be found in the result worksheet. So change every single F13 in this formula to result exclamation mark F12. That references cell F12 in the result worksheet. So I'm just going to copy and paste this over every single F13. We'll also do it in the round function. And now I can press enter. And this formula is fixed for the live win probability worksheet. I can drag that down to row 26. And we've got to make a similar change in column P. So for the sum, it's going to be N13 to O26 plus the home team current score in cell T3, absolute references of course. And same thing for the away team, N33 to O46, the sum of that plus the current score in T6. And of course, change every single F13 to result F12. That'll take a couple of seconds. And once you've done that, for the final part of the formula after the round function, press enter and then drag this down to cell P26. And we've got to do the same process for overtime number 3 in column Q. Go up to Q13, and then we're going to change the sum N13 to P26, and we're going to add the home team current score in T3 again. Same thing with the away side, adding their current score in T6, and then changing every single F13 to result F12. Once you've done that, for all of the occurrences, press enter and then drag down to row 26. I'll drag this down now, and then I'll also delete the values in row 18 as there's no player there. And then I'll select cells O13 through to Q26, copy that, and then paste it in O33 for Drew Holiday on the Celtics. And lads, that's all the necessary changes we need to make for the live win probability worksheet. All that's left now is going back into the simulations worksheet, running the simulation so we can get the expected points as well as the win percentages for both the Lakers and the Celtics, the home and away team. And that'll be based on our 4 parameters here, the current score for the home and away team and the time left in the quarter and the current quarter in the match. So we're going to go into the simulations worksheet now, and I'm going to do a bit of formatting, but the main thing is in cells B1, C1, we're going to put result E2 and then result E5 representing the home and away team, and do the exact same thing in cells F1 and G1. We're running 2 types of simulations, one for the result worksheet that's going to be in columns B and C, and one for the live win probability worksheet that's in columns F and G. Now in E2 and A2, write the text trials, and then below it in A3 and E3, we're going to use the sequence function to drop down numbers 1 through to 1,000, representing the number of trials. Now in cell B2, we're coming up with the sum of N12 to Q25 in the result worksheet, representing the Lakers' normal time score plus any possible overtime scores by the players. And we'll do the same thing in C2, but this time the range will be N32 all the way to Q45. Close that bracket, press enter. And then so we've got one game or one simulation right now. In this one, the Lakers won 128-91. Now what we're going to do is select the range A3 to C1002, go into the data tab, go into what if analysis, and then data table. A pop-up window will appear. Skip the row input cell for the column input cell, just put a random cell outside of the data set, say P2, press OK, and then it might take a few seconds for the trials to load, but when it does, it might look like this. So if you scroll down, the numbers can take time to load. But now I've got 1,000 trials of the Lakers versus Celtics game, and I can go back into the result worksheet and now pick up the expected score for the home team. This will be a simple round function, and we're going to round the average score for the Lakers from B3 to B1002 in the simulations worksheet to 0 digits, close the bracket, and we get an expected score of 108 for the Lakers. Now I'll do the same thing for the Celtics, except that the average will be in column C, so the average of C3 to C1002, and then after you close the bracket for the average function, 0 digits, close the bracket, and we've got an expected score line of 108 to 119 in favor of the Celtics, the away side. Now we've got to compute the Lakers win percentage as well as the Celtics win percentage. We can use the sum product function for this. Open bracket, 2 negative signs, a second open bracket, go back into simulations. Our range is going to be B3 to B1002, and we're picking up the number of times it's greater than C3 to C1002. Close the bracket twice and divide by 1,000 the number of trials. And what this function does, I'll copy that so I can use it in the cell L5, is that it picks up the amount of times that the score in column B is greater than the score in column C. That is, the Lakers score more than the Celtics in that simulation. Copy the same formula into L5, except change the greater than to less than, because this time we want to see how many times the values in column C for the Celtics beat the Lakers. your sum should be 100%, and we can see Boston are the favorites at about 68.8%. Now we can do the same thing for the live win probability worksheet, except there'll be a slight change in the formula we do for F2 and G2. So I'll do F2 first. It's going to be equal to the live win probability current score for the home side in T3 plus the sum of N13 to Q26. So the rest of normal time plus overtime if needed, added on to the current score in the match. So the Lakers have 113 in this particular simulation, and we'll do the same thing for the Celtics. So up to this point in the game, they've already scored 72 points. That's in cell T6, and then we're adding on the sum of N33 to Q30 or 46, sorry, and that is the rest of normal time plus the points scored in overtime if need be. So in this simulation, the Celtics win 115 to 107, and then of course we'll run that 1,000 times by selecting the range E3 to G1002, going to what if analysis, data table, column input cell again, just a random cell outside of the data set. Press OK, and then once you scroll down and take a couple seconds for Excel to load, you should see your simulations. And now I can use those just as I did for the result worksheet to find the expected score first. I'll go back into live win probability. It's going to be equal to round function, open bracket. Our number is the average function, open bracket. We're finding the average of F3 to F1002, the home team live win scores, and we're rounding to 0 digits. Close the bracket there, and you can see it takes a bit more time to load. I'm doing 2,000 simulations in the whole worksheet now. For the Lakers, they have an expected points of 113 based off of already scoring 83 points in the third quarter. And now I'm doing the same formula for the away side Celtics, just changing the column to G now. And then we can see the Lakers are the clear favorites here because they've already got an 11-point advantage and there's only one quarter left. So they're expected to score 114 to the Celtics 105. I'll copy that formula from the result worksheet before, and I'll change the columns to F greater than G. So all the times column F is greater than column G, that is, the Lakers score more than the Celtics in the simulation. So now the Lakers have jumped up to a 77.9% win percentage. And then when I change the greater than side to less than, it goes to the Celtics win probability. So make sure that equals 100%. And then now we've got our live win probability worksheet done. We can test it out by changing the parameters here. So I'll change the quarter to the fourth. We'll say there's 10 minutes left, so we'll reduce the amount of time left in the game. And I'll change the current score to 90 to 87, so make it a bit of a closer game. And then press enter, your win probability will update. And the Celtics and Lakers now have about an even chance of winning, with both having an expected points value of 130. Thanks for watching, lads. If you want to download this model and join the Discord of the best sports modeling community on YouTube, make sure you click the first link in the description below to go to the Excel Lads Patreon.